Really is a shame that they're not going to see us missing all of those. Making all of those shots. All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending.
Staff that puts them in position to succeed if they execute well.
There's so much resilience in the team. Things don't go just right. They just find ways to win.
If BYU is worthy of being in the top 10, they will have a chance to prove it now.
What's Trending is presented by Intermountain Healthcare, the official medical provider of BYU Athletics. And got a big matchup this weekend in Ames, Iowa. Number 11 and undefeated at 7-0 BYU, looking to build off the emotional victory over Utah this past Saturday as they head to the Midwest, not too far from where Jarom is right now. After the win over Utah, head coach Kalani Sitake spoke in the locker room about avoiding an emotional letdown.
Listen, last year we won the game, right, and then we lost the next one, and they lost their next one. So we got to figure that out. You guys with me? Yes, right? So that means we got to work hard after this is done, but we got to play hard and have fun too.
So as Kalani mentioned, after beating Utah in Salt Lake City last year, BYU came home. They lost to Kansas. And now everybody's making sure that they talk about the fact that they do not want that to happen this year, and it starts this weekend in Ames. Jarom, do you believe it will be different this year at Iowa State?
I do, and there's a couple of circumstances that are different, Shep. Last year was so dramatic. You had 4th and hold. You had Will Farron from 44 for number 44. You had Will Farron crowd surfing at 3 a.m. after getting home, and the students were there. That was an all-time win against Utah in a dramatic way. It was dramatic, but it wasn't that dramatic. BYU led most of the game. They expected to win that game. Yes, they came back, but it was a rockin' LES. It's a little different. Also, this team's been through it before. That was a 5-7 team that suddenly got to 9-0 last year. This team expected to be good. I don't know if they expected 7-0, but certainly they are at this point. And, it's Bear Bachmeier and a freshman quarterback, and so on and so forth. It's just a little different. There isn't a beat-up quarterback going through things on and off the field like Jake Retzlaff was last year. Also, Kansas was on a heater. They had beaten 2 ranked teams as an unranked team. Then they beat BYU. No unranked team had ever won 3 ranked games in a row like that as an unranked. And so Iowa State is a better team than Kansas was last year. But I think this BYU team is different. It's more about where BYU is mentally. Also, they acknowledge what happened last year, and I think they are prepared. I think they've moved on early in the week. I think Monday, maybe even Sunday, emotionally and physically, they were on to Iowa State. So I do think it's different. Yet, Iowa State comes in very hungry, Shep. They've lost 2 in a row. They had a bye week, and now they host the top-ranked team in the Big 12. It's an opportunity for the Clones to turn their season back to where they want to be, and BYU's walking into a pit here where they need to respond well, and I think they will.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do feel it will be different, and I think one of the biggest reasons is, look, we've all gone through things in our lives where when we go through it for the first time, you don't necessarily really know how to handle it, but you then, having gone through it before, the next time similar circumstances come up, you feel a lot better on how you're going to handle it. So being able to have last year where you're coming off that emotional win and you're 9-0 and you've just beaten Utah in Salt Lake City, and it's just it was a grind and physical and everything that goes into those games. And then you had the letdown against Kansas. Knowing how it went last time, and for it to be something that right after the game, Kalani Sitake brought up, it is top of mind. It is at the forefront of their conversations. That is not by mistake that Kalani mentioned that as one of the very first things he talked about. They know what happened last time, and they are determined to make sure that that is not going to be something that hampers them in this game. And I agree with you 100%, Jarom. This is going to be a test. It's going to be a test for a couple of reasons. Number one, Ames, regardless of what Iowa State's record is a tough place to play. That community shows up. They will be loud. That place will be packed. It's an unbelievable place for a football game. So the crowd is going to be energetic. They're going to be in it regardless of what the record of their team is. But you're getting a very determined Iowa State team. You already mentioned it, having coming off 2 losses. They have not won a game since the 27th of September. So they're coming up on a full month when you talk about the 2 losses in a row and then the bye week. They are determined, and BYU is going to get the very best that Iowa State has. But I think BYU is better prepared this time around than they were a year ago.
Iowa State's won 9 of their last 10 at home. I mean, they are very good at home, to your point. Moving on, which matchups do you believe will determine the outcome of the game Saturday?
Yeah, for me, I look at what the BYU defense has done all season long, and then specifically against the opposing quarterback. And this will be a little different in terms of skill set than what the Cougars have faced in recent weeks. Obviously, you've got a lot of guys that are dual threats. Specifically last week, you really weren't that concerned about Devin Dampier's passing ability. That is something that you have to pay attention to with Rocco Becht. He can certainly make plays with his legs as well, but he's got a fantastic arm. The thing that he is going to be a little bit hindered with is the fact that he doesn't have a couple of his receivers. Now, he does get his starting running back in Carson Hansen. That will certainly help to alleviate some of the pressure on his shoulders. But this is a guy that is just a gamer. He's tough. He's hard-nosed. So for me, the matchup is, can BYU's defense continue to handle the opposing quarterback like we've seen the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, Abu Sama's good as the other running back. They got a nice 1-2 punch there with Hansen coming back. More on the tight ends in a second. But I look at BYU's run game, which is its identity, versus the front 7, or front 6 in this case, because Iowa State runs a 3-3-5. BYU 10th in rushing offense in the country at 233 a game. Iowa State 64th in rushing defense. That's how BYU won last week. They were able to run the ball, and there will be running lanes. This defense for Iowa State has only given up 400-plus one time all year, Shep. It was against Cincinnati. Make it twice now with BYU going 400-plus on Saturday. LJ Martin, by the way, #1 running back in the Big 12 in rushing yards total, which he has more than he's ever had in a season at BYU so far with 774 rush yards per game at 111, and then second in yards per carry at 6.1. This O-line, LJ, bearing the run game, they've been spectacular. Other matchups I'm thinking about. Take care of the football, obviously, always. That was big last week. Another one, play from ahead. Iowa State trailed Cincinnati 31-7 in the first half. Iowa State came back, made it a game, but Cincinnati got a big lead. They only scored 7 in the second half, but they put up 38 against that defense. And then Iowa State trailed for the final 20 against Colorado. Get a lead, keep a lead. BYU's played with fire, but been successful so far, winning 3 one-score games so far this year. Does BYU have another fourth quarter comeback in them? We've certainly seen it. I would love to not have to deal with that in this game, but I'll take a win by 1+. And then the other thing is slow down Iowa State's tight ends. They used some 14 personnel last week, 4 tight ends on the field. The top 3 pass catchers in this offense are all tight ends. They are missing Higgins and Noel, who are on the Texans. Chase Sowell's been good, but he's not been like those guys. So look at Ben Bramer, Brett Eskildson, and Gabe Burkle. That's where Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker and Falatau Satuas specifically lining up with those tight ends in the run game with run fits, in the gaps, as well as in the pass game will be key.
Well, and I think this BYU offense is going to have plenty of opportunities to score on the Cyclone defense. They are really banged up, and you've been able to see during the 2-game losing streak teams been able to score on them. Cincinnati, probably the biggest culprit in that in terms of being able to put up points. And as you mentioned, you kind of put them up early and had this cushion throughout the entire game. But I think we've seen what the blueprint is for this BYU offense, and it starts with what you were talking about with LJ Martin on the ground. His ability to be able to stay healthy and be available so far for BYU has been a game changer, and one of the main reasons why this team is undefeated this far into the season. Him being able to run the ball certainly sets up the pass for Bear Bachmeier. As long as BYU can keep that ground game going and then allow Bear Bachmeier to pick and choose his spots to make those plays down the field, BYU's going to have chances to score in this game in Ames. And that brings us to our question of the day. BYU lost to Kansas after beating Utah last year. Do you believe it will be different this year at Iowa State? Our first response comes on X from K.R. Mercer, 1525 says, based on how many mentions it's getting from coaches, staff, and players, I think everyone in the program is very aware of the potential post-rivalry letdown. Yeah, it's kind of the way I looked at it. It was not by accident that Kalani mentioned that as soon as the game was over. Also on X, long LPA, yes, simply because Coach Satake is aware and already taking steps to buck that trend. This team is special and mentally stronger than teams in years past, it seems. All right, you can continue to weigh in on X, Facebook, and on Instagram.
Last night, Yegor Dioman made his NBA debut. Shep, first Cougar to play in an NBA game since Elijah Bryant back in 21 with the Milwaukee Bucks. What did you think of his debut where he scored 14 points?
Yeah, I was able to watch a little bit of it on the plane home, and I'm just happy for him. 14 points, and he was super efficient, 4 of 6 from the field, all threes, by the way, hit 3 threes, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. His game is perfect for the NBA because he has the ball handling skills, he can shoot, he's obviously got the size. I was so happy for him, especially because he has not played most of their preseason games. They were kind of holding him out with some nagging injuries. So the fact that he was able to come in and in his first game, beginning the season, have that type of performance, I thought that was pretty cool for him.
He's kind of playing combo guard, which surprised us, right? Pre-draft, we thought, hey, this is the best point guard in the draft here, perhaps, but best passer at least. And he was more of a shooter. He's holding the ball up a little higher when he released it. He's shooting it confident. Someone said, hey, what was it like to get on a roll there? And he said, frankly, I've been shooting like this in the preseason. This is who I am. I didn't get on a roll per se. Not offended, but kind of like, I just shoot well. I wasn't shooting well today. I just shoot well all the time. So happy for him. Excited to see what he can do. Certainly hope the Nets have some success because that was a blowout for the most part. So he was getting those shots up, which is good. Just get into a rhythm and shoot like he's been shooting, like he said. But I'm excited to watch him play, man. It's fun to have Cougars in the NBA, and certainly we look forward to AJ and Richie next year at this time, talking about them in the NBA. It's going to be great.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, Kelly Ford published a list of what record is needed for teams to be in the at-large conversation. And they have BYU needing a 10-2 record to be in that at-large conversation. Do you agree with that?
I do. I don't think a 9-3 BYU is in the conversation. And 10-2, it kind of depends how that happens, Shep. ESPN says BYU's strength of schedule is 60th right now, but the remaining schedule is 19th. We've talked about how hard it's going to be. It's top 20. When you lose, who you lose to, and how you lose, that all matters. That all matters. The 10-2 conversation probably would mean for BYU to be in that convo realistically, if they lost close, tight, competitive games the next 2 weeks, Shep, then won the final 3, didn't make it to Arlington, we're sitting there at 10-2, were interesting, had captured the nation's attention. Maybe in those last 3 they put up some style points like they did against Stanford. Then we're talking about maybe BYU being in the conversation about an at-large, but I'm just not that confident after last year's situation. There's some scar tissue, some PTSD of BYU having a resume that deserves maybe a little more and not getting it. So I don't know. If this was a 16-team college football playoff, I'd feel a little more confident about the situation you presented. But in the 12-team, I don't know, man. I think it's going to require a 1-loss BYU or situationally 2-loss maybe to get in the conversation. We're not talking about getting in, though. Being in the conversation, I think 2-loss, they're absolutely in the convo. But who cares? If you're not in, you're not in. You're either in or out.
Yeah, and to me, this is kind of an obvious answer. Yeah, 10-2. I think that's the least. You know what? I'm with you. 3 losses, and I don't think that you're in the conversation at all. And that's why there are a lot of teams that with 4 or 5 games left on the schedule, 1 more loss, and they are essentially out of the running. So yeah, I think minimum BYU's got to go 10-2, and I think at that point you are in the conversation. To what you said in terms of, BYU historically not necessarily getting the benefit of the doubt and, people not willing to give them maybe the little extra push that maybe some other teams or programs get. It's tough to say that you can only have 1 loss because I think there's going to be a lot of others that have 2 losses that will get in. But I'm with you. If you have only 1 loss, I think then you're in excellent shape. But I think the minimum you have to have is probably a 10-2 record. So, yeah, to me, it's kind of an obvious answer. All right, Number 11, BYU, as we've been talking about on the road this week at Iowa State. Here is your broadcast schedule. BYU Sports Nation Game Day on BYU TV starts at 1:30 Eastern Time. Cougar pregame live with yours truly on BYU Radio, also at 1:30 Eastern. And then the Cougars and the Cyclones from Ames on Fox and on BYU Radio at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget postgame coverage beginning immediately after the game on both BYU TV and on BYU Radio. All right, coming up next, Fox play-by-play announcer Jason Benetti joins the program to preview BYU and Iowa State. Which matchups will he be watching the closest? This is BYU Sports Nation.